Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of just absolute, unshakable precision.
Right, yeah. Like engineering.
Exactly, like engineering. You break your arm, you go to the hospital, the X-ray machine hums, and the doctor points to that jagged white line on the screen and says, well, there it is. That is the problem.
It's incredibly binary. Broken or not broken. Sick or healthy. I mean, we naturally gravitate toward that kind of clarity,
Yeah.
We like our biology to be visible and just neatly filed away.
We really do. But then you step out of the hospital and into the world of human optimization.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole different ballgame.
It really is. You step into nutrition, vitality, sports performance, and longevity, and suddenly that pristine X-ray machine is completely useless.
Completely.
We are no longer looking at a clear binary. We're looking at a landscape that is murky, highly subjective, and honestly a little chaotic. And today we are wading right into the absolute deep end of those muddy waters.
The deep end is right.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are speaking directly to you, the listener, because today's mission affects literally every single one of you. I mean, if you've ever swallowed a morning multivitamin or scooped some protein powder into a shaker bottle after a workout,
Or even just bought a little energy shot at the gas station on a Tuesday afternoon.
yes. If you've done any of that, you are part of this. Today, we're tracing the explosive, wild, and multi-billion-dollar evolution of the global supplement industry. We're starting all the way back in the ashes of 1945 and taking it right up to the very edge of our AI-driven future.
It is a staggering trajectory to map out. And to do this properly, we are relying on a truly remarkable foundation of source material today.
Oh, it is incredible. I have to establish this right out of the gate because as I was reading through these sources, the depth of this specific compilation absolutely blew my mind.
It's rare to get this kind of ground-level detail.
It really is. So this entire historical mapping, the real ground truth of how this industry was built, comes to us from a brilliant competition put together by Arnaud Veere.
Arnaud Veere, yes. A massive figure in this space.
Right. And he operates out of Force One, located at Spui 202 in The Hague over in the Netherlands. What struck me is that Arnaud isn't just some, academic historian looking backward from an ivory tower.
No, not at all. He lived it.
Exactly. He is a genuine, on-the-ground expert and an early pioneer in the personalization of supplements, which makes his perspective incredibly prescient, especially when we start talking about the high-tech direction the industry is heading today.
That on-the-ground experience is precisely what makes his compilation so invaluable. He was there when the foundational bricks of this industry were being laid.
And what's fascinating is that when you dive into his work, you realize the modern supplement industry was not born in a sterile, pristine pharmaceutical lab.
Far from it. It emerged from this messy, vibrant intersection of post-World War II societal shifts, early fringe longevity movements, and some incredibly audacious marketing strategies.
Okay, let's unpack this because the sheer scale of the modern supplement industry today is almost hard to comprehend. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars circulating globally every single year.
It's massive.
You walk into any grocery store, any pharmacy, or just open an app on your phone, and you are flooded with whey protein isolates, collagen peptides, gut health probiotics, creatine. I mean, the list is practically infinite.
It's overwhelming for the average consumer, for sure.
It is. But I really want to know where the seed was planted. Did this start in some shiny corporate facility with scientists in white coats having a eureka moment?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we actually have to travel back to a very specific psychological moment in human history.
Okay, what moment?
The period immediately following 1945. The United States, along with much of the Western world, was entering an unprecedented economic boom. The middle class was expanding at a crazy rate.
Right, the post-war boom.
But more importantly, there was a massive collective psychological shift regarding human sustenance. During the Second World War, the primary anxiety surrounding food was scarcity.
Because of the rationing.
Exactly. It was about rationing. People were worried about simply securing enough raw calories to keep their families alive and functioning.
The baseline was survival. You weren't worried about optimizing your gut microbiome. You were worried about whether you had enough stamps for a block of cheese or a tin of meat.
Exactly that. But as the 1950s rolled in, that fear of scarcity began to evaporate in the West.
Because the economy was roaring back.
Right. Suddenly, families had access to a much more varied, abundant diet. The refrigerator became a staple of the American home. And the fundamental question shifted.
From survival to what?
It was no longer, how do we get enough food to survive? It became, how do we use what we consume to live healthier, more vibrant, and most importantly, longer lives.
Oh, I see. That's a huge pivot.
And parallel to this, during the war effort, scientists had made incredible strides in understanding the actual biological mechanisms of vitamins and minerals. The military funded this research, to keep soldiers fighting fit in extreme conditions.
Wait, so the military was basically acting as a giant state-sponsored beta test for nutritional science.
In many ways, yeah. The fundamental discoveries existed before the war, but the large-scale understanding of human application happened during and immediately after. For instance, they definitively mapped out how vitamin C prevented scurvy.
Right, scurvy. But let's actually pause there because I think people hear vitamin C prevents scurvy and they just accept it as a trivia fact. How does that actually work mechanically in the body?
Well, it comes down to collagen synthesis. Collagen is the primary structural protein in your body. It holds your skin, your blood vessels, your tissues together.
Okay, the glue.
Yeah, the glue. And to synthesize strong collagen, your body requires specific enzymes. Those enzymes absolutely require ascorbic acid vitamin C to function.
So without it, the glue just falls apart.
Literally, yes. If you don't have vitamin C, your body produces defective collagen. Your blood vessels become fragile, they leak, your gums bleed, your teeth loosen. That is scurvy.
Oh, wow. That's horrifying.
It's a mechanical failure of tissue building. So the military solidified that, and also the understanding that vitamin D was essential for calcium absorption, for bone density, and that the B vitamin complex was a major player in cellular energy.
So once the war ends, you have this treasure trove of validated biological science just sitting there waiting to be commercialized.
And commercialized it was. This created a brand new consumer market. Vitamins underwent a profound rebranding.
Rebranding how?
They shifted from being strict medical treatments prescribed by a doctor for a severe, life-threatening deficiency like scurvy to becoming aspirational lifestyle products for the everyday middle-class family.
So they weren't cures anymore.
No, they were daily health insurance.
That is a massive psychological pivot. It goes from take this pill so your teeth don't literally fall out of your skull to take this pill so you feel fantastic and energetic at your desk job.
It completely changed the trajectory of public health commerce. Now, the earliest companies to capitalize on this were very pharmaceutical in their approach. Very basic products.
Like what?
Cod liver oil, yeast tablets, basic calcium and iron supplements. But then you start seeing pioneers emerge, like Solgar, which was founded in 1947.
Solgar, yeah, I've seen them in stores.
Right. And what's fascinating is how Solgar differentiated themselves in a market that was just starting to take shape. They didn't rely on flashy marketing or wild claims.
What did they do?
They focused intensely on quality and what we now call bioavailability.
Bioavailability, meaning how much of the vitamin your body actually absorbs rather than just what passes straight through your digestive system.
Precisely. And to protect that bioavailability, they were among the first to introduce dark amber glass bottles.
Oh, I've always wondered about those. You still see them today in the premium vitamin aisles. I always assumed it was just an aesthetic choice to make it look, somewhat like an old apothecary.
The aesthetic was a byproduct, honestly. The primary reason was pure chemistry. Vitamins, particularly certain water-soluble ones and fat-soluble compounds, are highly susceptible to degradation from ultraviolet light and oxidation.
So the light actually destroys the vitamin.
Yes. UV light can literally break the molecular bonds of the nutrients, rendering them completely inert. The amber glass blocks the specific wavelengths of UV light that cause that photochemical degradation.
That's brilliant.
It was. By implementing this, Solgar was actually pioneering early orthomolecular principles.
Orthomolecular. Let's define that for the listener because that sounds like a very dense academic term.
It is a bit dense. It's a term later popularized by the two-time Nobel laureate Linus Pauling. Ortho comes from the Greek word for correct or right.
Okay.
So orthomolecular medicine is the practice of preventing and treating disease by providing the body with optimal amounts of substances which are natural to the body.
The right molecules in the right amounts.
Exactly. Solgar built a highly respected market based on nutrients that had genuine scientific backing. But notice something critical in this early era. The idea of using supplements for sports to build massive muscles was practically non-existent.
Wait, really? Because if I look at the industry today, the sports nutrition aisle is an absolute behemoth. It completely dominates the visual landscape of supplements.
It does today, yes.
But back in the 40s and 50s, it was almost exclusively about people just wanting to live longer.
Yes, and this is a crucial point highlighted in our source material. Arnaud van der Veere explicitly notes in his compilation that it is a little-known historical fact that the early anti-aging and longevity lobbies actually did far more for early supplement development than the sports world ever did.
That's wild to think about.
The driving financial engine of the early industry was entirely focused on vitality, extending lifespan, and disease prevention for the aging population.
Okay, so if the foundation of the market was all about longevity and cellular health in these little dark glass bottles, how on earth do we get to the world of massive neon-colored tubs of protein powder?
It's quite a jump.
Because I know Arnaud van der Veer's own origin story involves exactly that kind of gritty bulk powder environment.
It does, and it provides a wonderfully visceral contrast to the polished, sterile, pharmaceutical image of those vitamin companies. If we jump forward a bit to September 1976,
1976, okay.
right, long before the internet or global supply chains, the market was still largely relying on mail-order catalogs and small specialty health shops. Arnaud van der Veer was a young man living in The Hague in the Netherlands.
Right.
He started out working for a man named Joop van Kampen at a place called Hercules Samurai, which was located right on the Beeklawn in West-Eind.
I love how specific this history is in the compilation. You can almost picture the street corner in the 1970s.
You really can.
Yeah.
And the physical reality of the work was incredibly grueling. Joop van Kampen was an early importer, trying to bring this emerging muscle-centric health trend directly to people's homes.
So what was Arnaud actually doing there?
Arnaud's role. He literally stood in a back room, manually skipping chalky, terrible-tasting milk and egg protein out of massive 50-kilo bulk sacks.
50 kilos. That's over 100 pounds of powder.
Yeah, and he was transferring it scoop by scoop into smaller 1-kilo bags for retail sale.
That is amazing. Just a guy, a scoop, and 110 pounds of raw, unflavored protein dust flying through the air.
He was paid quite well for it, as he notes in his work. But more importantly, it was his very first tactile introduction to the supplement industry. That back room in The Hague is where the foundation of his immense industry-spanning knowledge began.
It sounds exactly like the tech industry in the 1970s.
How do you mean?
You know, we have this mythology of Silicon Valley, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak sitting in a dusty garage in Los Altos, soldering circuit boards by hand to build the first Apple computers. It was completely grassroots.
Oh, I see the comparison.
It sounds like the early sports supplement industry was the exact same thing. It was just guys in back rooms in places like The Hague scooping raw protein powders out of giant burlap sacks instead of writing code. It was raw, unpolished, and I have to imagine that early egg protein powder tasted absolutely like drywall.
To say it tasted like drywall is probably a generous compliment to early milk and egg protein powders. The solubility was terrible, the texture was gritty, and the flavor was famously difficult to swallow.
But your Silicon Valley analogy is spot on. It was a grassroots, garage-level industry tinkering with the raw materials of human performance. And it was sitting on a powder keg, waiting for a cultural spark to make it explode. So we have these health-conscious middle-class families buying vitamins in amber bottles, and we have young guys like Arnaud scooping bulk protein in the Netherlands. How do we get from that niche fragmented reality to the massive oiled-up bodybuilders completely dominating mainstream magazine covers?
The aesthetic shift.
Yeah, how did aesthetic fitness become the driving engine of this multi-billion-dollar machine?
To understand that massive leap, we have to look at the broader cultural revolution of the 1980s. The 80s fundamentally shifted how the Western world viewed the human body.
Right. Fitness became a huge trend.
It moved from being a niche hobby for eccentrics to becoming an absolute, undeniable status symbol. Think about the cultural touchstones. Jim Fixx made jogging a national obsession.
Oh, and Jane Fonda's aerobics tapes. They took over television sets in millions of living rooms.
Exactly. And massive neon-lit gym chains like Bally Total Fitness started opening in suburban strip malls everywhere.
The era of leg warmers, neon sweatbands, and the realization that you could charge people a monthly fee to lift heavy things.
Exactly. And the psychology shifted. Americans didn't just want to be biologically healthy on the inside anymore. They desperately wanted to look healthy on the outside.
The visual mattered more.
A highly muscular, aggressively toned body became a visual symbol of discipline, disposable income, high energy, and success. It became an asset, even in the corporate boardroom.
So who kicked off the bodybuilding side of it?
The true catalyst, the singular spark that ignited the specialized sports supplement industry, was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
The Terminator himself?
Well, this was before he became the Terminator. He was just an astoundingly charismatic Austrian bodybuilder. In 1977, the documentary film Pumping Iron was released.
Ah, Pumping Iron. Classic.
It followed Arnold and a cast of other bodybuilders as they prepared for the Mr. Olympia contest. Before that film, bodybuilding was largely viewed by the general public as a bizarre, somewhat unseemly fringe subculture.
Kind of a freak show vibe.
A bit, yes. But Arnold changed all of that. He made bodybuilding charismatic, funny, acceptable, and incredibly mainstream.
So millions of young men watched that movie and thought, I want to build a body that looks exactly like that.
And wherever a massive wave of new, eager enthusiasts goes, the supplement industry is standing right there at the shoreline waiting to sell them something.
That is the golden rule of commerce. But while Arnold was the face of this movement, I know there was someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Yes, the true architect was a man named Joe Weider. And understanding Joe Weider's story is fundamental to understanding the very DNA of how supplements are marketed today.
Tell me about him.
Joe Weider was born in 1919 in Montreal, Canada, to poor Polish Jewish immigrants. He was small, skinny, and heavily bullied as a teenager in a tough neighborhood.
Classic underdog.
So he took a few scrap dollars he had, bought a crude set of dumbbells made out of car axles and wheels from a local junkyard, and started lifting in his backyard.
The absolute ultimate superhero origin story.
It truly is. He noticed his physical body changing, getting wider and stronger, but more importantly, he noticed his internal psychology changing. His confidence skyrocketed.
Because he was physically capable of defending himself.
Right. He realized very early on that weightlifting didn't just build muscle tissue, it built mental resilience. It built an identity. And in 1939, operating out of his parents' modest kitchen, he published the very first issue of a magazine he called Your Physique.
Wait, 1939? That is incredibly early. That's before World War II even ended.
He was a true, unparalleled visionary in this space. Over the next few decades, he leveraged that initial publication to build a massive global empire of magazines.
Like which ones?
Muscle Builder, Muscle and Fitness, Flex, Shape, Men's Fitness. But what Joe Weider did that fundamentally changed the world of commerce was inventing what industry insiders now call the Weider formula.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. How exactly did this formula work? What was he doing differently than just putting an ad in a paper?
Joe Weider understood a profound psychological truth. He wasn't selling protein powder. He was selling the dream.
Selling the dream.
He understood that people don't buy a tub of chalky powder because they want to consume powder. They buy it because they want the result. They're buying confidence, sexual attractiveness, success, and peer respect.
So he baked that into the magazines.
Yes. Within the pages of his magazines, Joe Weider essentially invented modern content marketing decades before the term was ever taught in a business school.
Walk me through the layout. If I open an issue of Muscle and Fitness in, say, 1984, what am I looking at?
He engineered a very specific emotional journey. You would flip the page and find a glowing, highly motivational article featuring an interview with a champion bodybuilder.
Okay.
Right next to it, there would be a meticulously detailed training plan showing exactly how many sets and reps that specific champion lifted. Next to that, a complex dietary plan.
Right, building the blueprint.
And seamlessly integrated into all this editorial content were massive, full-page, high-gloss advertisements for Joe Weider's own personal line of nutritional supplements.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if I'm a 16-year-old kid reading this in my bedroom, I'm looking at this and thinking, all right, I have the exact workout plan, I have the chicken and broccoli diet, but if I don't go out and buy this specific Reader Mega Mass protein powder, the equation's broken. I'm not going to look like Arnold.
That is exactly the psychological trap. The reader felt that the intense, painful physical training was fundamentally incomplete without the specialized supplemental nutrition.
He linked them together.
He linked the information, the inspiration, and the product sales into one unbreakable, self-reinforcing chain.
It's absolutely brilliant. It is honestly exactly like the Marvel Cinematic Universe model today.
The MCU. How so?
Think about it. Disney creates this massive closed ecosystem. The multi-million-dollar blockbuster movies are essentially just massive 2-hour advertisements. And then the action figures, the T-shirts, the theme park tickets, those are the merchandise.
I see.
But the fans feel they have to buy the merchandise to truly be a part of the culture and the identity of the MCU. Weider did that with paper and powder. His magazines were the blockbuster movies, and his supplements were the merchandise you had to buy to join the tribe.
That is a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
To take it a step further, Weider even cultivated his own roster of superheroes. To populate his magazines, he needed stars.
Bodybuilders.
Yes. He contracted the absolute best bodybuilders of the era, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, Frank Zane, Lou Ferrigno. They became his exclusive living billboards.
So they were under contract with him directly.
Oh, absolutely. When Arnold first moved to America, Weider practically sponsored his entire life. He gave him a place to live, a weekly stipend, and promoted him relentlessly in print.
Wow.
In return, Arnold became the ultimate brand ambassador, validating the Weider product line to millions of readers.
But hold on, if millions of young men are suddenly getting highly muscular, spending hours in the gym, and consuming massive quantities of these unregulated powders, what did the actual traditional medical establishment think of this?
This raises an important question, and it is exactly where a massive cultural and professional friction began. The traditional medical establishment pushed back incredibly hard against Weider and the burgeoning fitness culture.
Because they thought it was dangerous.
Doctors, dietitians, and mainstream scientists publicly argued that the claims being made in Weider's magazines were completely scientifically unproven. They warned the public that you couldn't just drink a powder, lift some weights, and suddenly look like Mr. Olympia.
Which, to be fair to the doctors, is completely true. The magazines were definitely leaving out the, let's say, pharmaceutical enhancements that those champions were using behind closed doors.
Yes, the presence of anabolic steroids was the giant elephant in the room that the magazines conveniently ignored. But beyond the steroid issue, there was a much deeper, more fundamental philosophical clash happening here.
Between the doctors and the bodybuilders.
Yes. The traditional Western medical model was entirely built around pathology. It was designed to treat the sick, cure disease, and bring a patient back to a baseline of normal.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
A completely healthy, highly muscular, exceptionally fit person who is actively trying to push past normal to optimize their biology simply did not fit into the existing medical paradigm.
So the doctors didn't really know what to do with them.
Worse than that, healthy people attempting to proactively optimize themselves were often viewed almost as a threat, or at least a dangerous nuisance, to a medical world focused on curing illness.
They just saw it as vanity.
It's exactly. The establishment viewed bodybuilding not as health, but as a dangerous vanity project. This initial friction birthed a massive adversarial relationship between the medical lobby and the supplement industry that still heavily influences legislation and public perception today.
But Joe Weider, sitting atop his magazine empire, didn't care at all about what the doctors thought, did he?
Not in the slightest. He saw bodybuilding as a lifestyle, an art form, and an inspiration, not clinical science. And commercially speaking, his instincts were dead right.
The business was booming.
The profit margins in the sports supplement space during the 1980s were almost difficult to comprehend. Because the raw ingredients, things like basic whey protein or simple vitamins, were incredibly cheap to source in bulk.
Whey protein was cheap back then?
Whey protein at the time was literally considered a waste byproduct of the cheese manufacturing industry.
Wait, whey protein was a waste product?
Yes. Cheese manufacturers used to literally pay to have liquid whey hauled away and dumped.
Oh.
The supplement industry realized they could dry it, flavor it with cocoa powder, put it in a massive plastic jug with a holographic label, and attach immense emotional appeal to it. Because of this, the profit margins could sometimes reach up to 1,000%.
1,000% margin. That is not a business. That is a legal gold rush.
It was an absolute gold rush. Brands like Universal Nutrition exploded onto the scene. They targeted the truly hardcore lifters with highly aggressive products, like the Animal Pack.
Oh, I've seen the Animal Pack. It's a massive tin of pills.
A highly dosed vitamin and amino acid pack, which is remarkably still sitting on store shelves today. You also had companies like Twin Lab, which pioneered liquid amino acids and vitamins, seeing massive exponential growth.
Okay, so let's look at the mechanics of this. We have this massive organic consumer demand generated by Joe Weider's magazines. People are reading Muscle and Fitness on their lunch breaks. They're fired up. They want the supplements. But where were regular people actually going to physically buy this stuff in the 1980s? I mean, you can't just open a web browser and click add to cart with next day delivery back then.
Exactly. The logistics of distribution were the major bottleneck. This brings us to the fascinating retail wars of the 1980s, which fundamentally fractured the market in a way we still see today.
The retail wars.
As the fitness boom took hold, the giant retail supermarkets, massive chains like Kroger, Albertsons, and later Walmart woke up and realized just how much money was being left on the table.
Because of those 1,000% margins.
Precisely. Now, you have to understand the economics of a supermarket.
Yeah.
They traditionally run on razor-thin profit margins. A gallon of milk, a dozen eggs, or a loaf of bread barely makes a profit.
Right, it's a sheer volume game. You sell 10,000 boxes of cereal for pennies of profit each.
But then a supermarket executive looks at a bottle of multivitamins. It takes up a fraction of an inch of shelf space. It has an expiration date 2 years in the future, meaning zero spoilage. And it offers a massive, juicy profit margin compared to a head of lettuce.
It's the perfect retail product.
So suddenly, supermarkets and large pharmacy chains like Walgreens and CVS started clearing out massive amounts of floor space to build dedicated health and vitamin aisles.
I can completely see the consumer psychology there, too. If I go to the pharmacy and I buy my daily multivitamins in the exact same physical aisle where I buy my aspirin, my Band-Aids, and my cough syrup, my brain subconsciously gives those completely unregulated vitamins a halo of medical safety.
That halo effect is very real.
It feels like medicine because it's sitting next to the medicine.
That is a highly astute observation, and the retailers relied heavily on that exact psychological phenomenon. That strategic placement normalized supplements for the average American household.
Yeah.
Buying a multivitamin became as routine and unquestioned as buying a tube of toothpaste.
Right.
But while the supermarkets dominated the general health and vitamin sector, they hit a massive, impenetrable wall when it came to sports nutrition.
Why? I mean, if they can effectively sell a bottle of vitamin C, why couldn't they sell a tub of whey protein? It's just a different powder in a bigger bottle.
Because the supermarket infrastructure is built entirely for speed and convenience, not for education or consultation. Imagine a hardcore bodybuilder or even just an enthusiastic amateur walks into a Kroger in 1988.
Okay.
He walks up to the 16-year-old kid stocking shelves in the health aisle and asks, "Excuse me, what is the exact amino acid profile of this specific whey protein? Is this an isolate or a concentrate? Does it have a high concentration of leucine?
Oh, boy.
And how fast does this absorb into the bloodstream compared to a micellar casein protein?"
Yeah.
What do you think happens in that interaction?
So 16-year-old kid stares at him in absolute terror, drops a box of cereal, and slowly backs away.
Exactly. The supermarket staff could not answer complex, highly technical biological questions.
Yeah.
So the massive tubs of sports nutrition products just sat on the supermarket shelves, collected dust, and eventually expired.
That makes total sense.
This created a massive structural divide in the supplement market that still exists to this very day. You have mass-market general health products, your simple multivitamins and fish oils dominating the supermarkets, versus specialized sports nutrition that require deep knowledge, consultation, and a specialized retail environment.
And who stepped in to fill that massive gap for this specialized knowledge?
A retail company that would become an absolute, undeniable American icon. GNC, or General Nutrition Centers.
Ah, GNC. Just hearing the name brings back visceral memories. The overpowering smell of synthetic vanilla protein powder and berry pre-workout drifting out into the concourse of the local shopping mall.
It is a scent practically burned into the olfactory memory of a generation. Now, GNC actually started way back in 1935 as a very small, humble health food store in Pittsburgh called Laxzoon, founded by a man named David Shakarian.
Oh, I had no idea they were that old.
Yeah, they originally sold yogurt and healthy sandwiches. But in the late 1970s and early 80s, GNC hit upon a brilliant, highly aggressive expansion strategy. They recognized early on that the enclosed American shopping mall was rapidly becoming the absolute center of suburban social and commercial life.
So the strategy is, you go to the mall on a Saturday to buy some sneakers at Foot Locker. Maybe you grab a hot pretzel at the food court, and boom, right there on the corner, you walk past the glowing red letters of a GNC.
And you walk inside because the staff behind the counter were explicitly trained to engage with you. They offered the one critical thing the giant supermarket couldn't: expert advice and consultation.
They could actually answer the amino acid question.
Exactly. If you walked in and asked a GNC employee about peptide bonds, branched-chain amino acids, or absorption rates, they were trained to answer you. They didn't just sell individual products, they sold comprehensive solutions.
Like a curated stack.
Right. A customer would walk in, often feeling vulnerable, and say, "I want to lose 30 pounds," or "I'm a high school football player and I want to put on muscle." The GNC employee would walk the aisles with them and build a custom stack of 4 or 5 different products designed to work synergistically.
Honestly, that sounds like a fantastic experience for the consumer. Having an enthusiastic expert guide them through a highly confusing, jargon-filled marketplace.
It was a highly effective retail experience, but there was a significant hidden catch behind the counter.
There always is. What was the catch?
GNC executives realized that selling other companies' brands, like a tub of TwinLab protein or Solgar vitamins, was profitable. But manufacturing and selling their own private label brands was exponentially more profitable, as they controlled the entire supply chain.
So they're competing with their own vendors.
So they created a massive line of GNC-branded products that directly competed with the external brands on their own shelves. And to ensure that those private label products actually moved off the shelves, they implemented a highly specific commission structure for their retail staff.
Oh, I see exactly where this is going.
A GNC retail employee was paid a relatively low baseline hourly wage, but they made a commission, often called a PM, or push money, on almost every sale.
Let me guess, the commission was different for the house brand.
Crucially, the commission percentage was significantly higher if they successfully convinced a customer to buy a GNC private label product compared to a competitor's product sitting right next to it.
So what does this all mean for the consumer? It means the so-called expert advice wasn't really objective nutritional guidance at all, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Let's go back to an analogy. It's exactly like walking into a massive auto mall and asking a specific Ford car dealer which truck on earth is the absolute best for your family's needs. They are always, 100% of the time, going to point to the Ford F-150 sitting on their specific lot because that is the transaction that pays their mortgage.
That is the perfect analogy to understand the mechanics of the GNC sales floor.
The advice is entirely compromised by the incentive structure.
The financial incentive structure created an inherent, undeniable bias. The consultation practically always skewed heavily toward the house brand, regardless of whether a demonstrably superior or cleaner product from a competitor existed on the very same shelf.
But it worked for them financially.
Oh, commercially speaking, this model was an unstoppable juggernaut. At its absolute peak, GNC operated over 8,000 stores worldwide. They essentially conquered the globe, becoming the undisputed gatekeepers of sports nutrition.
8,000 stores, wow. But obviously they aren't the titans they used to be.
No. Eventually, that brick-and-mortar model collapsed. They were crushed under the immense weight of high mall lease rates, the rise of ruthless internet price competition, and critically, the complete loss of their monopoly on nutritional information.
Right, when consumers could just Google best whey protein, they didn't need the guy behind the counter anymore.
Exactly. GNC eventually filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2020.
Wow, the complete rise and catastrophic fall of a retail empire. But wait, if GNC was expanding so massively throughout the 80s and 90s, opening thousands of stores, the actual manufacturers making the powders must have been running their factories around the clock to keep up.
The demand was definitely there.
But I know the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, was breathing down the industry's neck during this time. How did the floodgates truly open for mass, unchecked manufacturing?
The floodgates were blown completely off their hinges because of a single, monumental piece of federal legislation passed in 1994.
Okay, what was it?
It is arguably the most important moment in the history of the industry. It's called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, almost universally referred to in the industry by its acronym DSHEA.
DSHEA.
DSHEA. I've heard this acronym thrown around in documentaries and by industry insiders. Why is this specific law so incredibly crucial?
To understand the impact of DSHEA, you have to understand the regulatory environment just prior to 1994. The FDA was beginning to crack down hard.
On supplements? Yes. They were increasingly treating many high-dose vitamins, herbal extracts, and amino acids, essentially like unapproved pharmaceutical drugs. They were threatening to mandate that supplement manufacturers undergo the exact same rigorous, multi-year, multi-million-dollar clinical safety and efficacy trials that giant pharma companies use before releasing a new heart medication.
Which would instantly bankrupt 99% of the supplement companies overnight. I mean, they don't have Merck or Pfizer money to run 10-year double-blind placebo studies.
Precisely. The industry viewed this as an existential threat. They claimed this heavy-handed regulation would completely stifle nutritional innovation and destroy thousands of small American businesses.
So what did they do to stop the FDA?
The industry banded together and launched one of the most aggressive, highly coordinated, and wildly successful grassroots lobbying campaigns in American legislative history.
Really?
They flooded Congress with millions of letters from angry consumers who were terrified the government was going to take away their vitamin C and their echinacea, and the industry won. DSHEA was passed.
And what did it actually do?
DSHEA legally and definitively separated dietary supplements from pharmaceutical drugs. And it achieved this by executing a brilliant legal maneuver. It completely flipped the burden of proof.
Wait, What exactly do you mean by flipping the burden of proof in a legal sense?
Well, under the standard FDA pharmaceutical model, a drug manufacturer has an immense burden. They have to comprehensively prove to the government that their new chemical compound is both safe and effective before it is ever legally allowed to be sold to a patient.
Right, they have to prove it won't hurt anyone first.
Under the new DSHEA regulations for supplements, the manufacturer did not have to prove safety beforehand.
You're kidding?
No. As long as the ingredient wasn't entirely new to the food supply, they could just formulate a product, put it in a bottle, and put it on a store shelf. The burden of proof shifted to the government. It was now entirely up to the severely underfunded FDA to scientifically prove that a supplement on the market was actively unsafe in order to mandate a recall and pull it off the shelves.
I have to stop you there. So what does this all mean? Isn't this absolutely terrifying from a consumer protection standpoint?
Many people thought so.
The burden of proof was completely inverted. It's exactly like the government telling giant automakers, hey, listen, you no longer have to run expensive crash tests on your cars before you sell them to families. Just build whatever you want, put them on the highway, and we will only issue a safety recall if enough people actually get maimed or killed out on the road.
Your highway analogy perfectly encapsulates the exact enduring fears of medical critics and consumer watchdogs. It was a masterpiece of lobbying, focusing the issue entirely around health, freedom, and personal choice, rather than corporate regulation.
It just sounds so reckless.
The dual nature of the DSHEA legislation is profound and highly complex. On one hand, you are completely right. This lack of upfront oversight opened a massive door to shady business practices, wildly underdosed products, false claims, and sometimes even dangerous tainted ingredients making it to the market.
Right, the Wild West.
But to look at the other side of the coin, DSHEA is also the exact reason the industry grew to hundreds of billions of dollars. It created a massive boom of what industry insiders refer to as invisible factories.
Invisible factories, meaning companies that sell supplements but don't actually make them.
Exactly. DSHEA birthed the modern era of contract manufacturing, toll blending, and private labeling. Suddenly, anyone with a few $1,000s and a marketing idea could start a supplement brand, and they never needed to own a stainless steel mixing vat or hire a single chemist.
You just outsource it.
You just call up a massive contract manufacturing facility in Utah or New Jersey, pick a standard formula from their catalog, design a flashy label on your computer, and you are instantly in the supplement business.
So let me get this straight. If a listener walks into their kitchen pantry right now and looks at 3 completely different, fiercely competing brands of, say, vitamin C or basic whey protein, there is a very high probability that all 3 of those different bottles were literally mixed, pressed, and packaged on the exact same assembly line in the exact same facility on the exact same afternoon.
Yes, that is highly probable.
And the only real difference is the graphic design on the plastic wrapper.
Branding, marketing, and the story you told became the true product rather than the underlying powder.
That's crazy.
But again, to maintain total objectivity here, DSHEA wasn't just about marketing tricks. It also unleashed an era of unprecedented, lightning-fast product innovation.
Because they bypassed the 10-year trials?
Because companies didn't have to wait 10 years for FDA bureaucracy to clear a new natural compound, the United States instantly became the undisputed global trendsetter for sports nutrition. Legitimate, heavily researched, game-changing ingredients could hit the market and reach athletes in months instead of decades.
And the absolute greatest, most undeniable example of this post-DSHEA rapid innovation cycle.
Creatine.
Creatine. The absolute holy grail of the gym bros. I feel like literally every single person I know who has ever touched a barbell takes creatine.
It's almost treated like water at this point.
And with very good reason. In a landscape filled with hyperbole, creatine is the rare, almost mythical supplement where the aggressive marketing claims and the actual biological science perfectly align.
It actually works.
Now, the molecule itself was actually discovered way back in 1832 by a brilliant French chemist named Michel-Eugène Chevreul, who successfully isolated it from a skeletal muscle of meat.
1832, that's almost 200 years ago.
But it sat in relative academic obscurity for over a century and a half. It didn't explode into the public consciousness until the 1992 Olympic Games in Barcelona.
What happened there?
British track and field athletes, including Linford Christie, who won gold in the 100-meter dash, openly used it with phenomenal success. Okay, so let's pop the hood on this. We talked about vitamins and collagen earlier. Why does creatine work so incredibly well for athletic performance? What is the actual cellular mechanism here?
It fundamentally comes down to the biology of cellular energy, specifically a process called cellular respiration.
Okay.
When you perform a short, highly explosive physical movement, like sprinting out of starting blocks or lifting a heavily loaded barbell, your muscle fibers require instant energy. They get this energy from a molecule called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate.
Triphosphate, meaning 3.
Right. The tri means it has 3 phosphate groups attached to it. When your muscle contracts, it breaks off one of those phosphate groups. That chemical break releases the massive burst of energy your muscle uses to move.
Okay, so ATP is the fuel.
Yes, but the problem is your muscles only store enough ATP for about 3 to 5 seconds of maximum exertion.
Only a few seconds.
It depletes almost instantly. Once that phosphate group breaks off, the ATP becomes ADP adenosine diphosphate with only 2 phosphates.
Okay, so it loses 1.
It is essentially a dead battery. It cannot provide energy. This is where creatine enters the picture as a biological hero. When you supplement with creatine, it stores itself in your muscles as phosphocreatine.
And what does that do?
It essentially acts like a rapid backup generator. It rushes in and donates its phosphate group to the dead ADP, instantly turning it back into ATP.
So it constantly recharges the batteries while you are actively lifting.
Precisely. It rapidly regenerates your ATP stores during the exercise. In practical terms in the gym, this allows a lifter to push out 1 or 2 extra, highly intense reps before muscular failure sets in.
Which makes a huge difference over time.
Right. And over weeks and months of training, those extra reps lead to significantly greater mechanical tension, which forces the body to synthesize significantly more muscle mass. It is biologically proven, highly effective, and remarkably safe.
Okay, so the industry finally has a product in their hands that legitimately, undeniably works. It actually delivers on the promise. How did they choose to sell it to the masses?
They sold it by inventing an entirely new, highly sophisticated marketing paradigm. In 1995, a Canadian company named MuscleTech stormed onto the scene.
MuscleTech, I remember those ads.
Now, before MuscleTech, supplement advertisements in magazines were incredibly basic. They usually just featured a photo of a huge, sweaty bodybuilder screaming while holding a tub of protein.
The classic Weider style.
MuscleTech looked at the market and realized they needed to expand the demographic. They needed to target the everyday guy, the accountant, the student, the lawyer, not just the professional bodybuilders. And to do that, they pioneered the concept of science as marketing.
Science as marketing. You mean using highly technical academic jargon to overwhelm and convince people into buying the product?
Exactly. MuscleTech didn't just sell a tub of plain creatine powder. They formulated products and gave them hyper-technical, almost pharmaceutical-sounding names like CellTech and NitroTech.
Oh, I remember those names.
They spent tens of millions of dollars buying out premium, full-page, and double-page spreads in all the major fitness magazines. But their ads didn't look like traditional advertisements. They were meticulously designed to look exactly like peer-reviewed medical journal entries.
Oh, I remember these. The pages were packed with tiny, dense text.
They featured models wearing white medical lab coats looking seriously into microscopes. They utilized complex biochemical diagrams, massive bar graphs showing vertical growth, and endless footnotes referencing proprietary clinical trials.
So they were trying to look like actual doctors.
They would combine the basic creatine monohydrate with massive insulin-spiking doses of simple sugars like dextrose and claim the resulting transport mechanism was a proprietary, patented scientific breakthrough.
Wow. So they realized that in a crowded, noisy market, consumer perception is the actual product. If it looks like a highly engineered, cutting-edge medicine, the consumer will trust it and pay a premium for it, just like a medicine.
Precisely. MuscleTech fundamentally shifted the entire industry's messaging. They moved it away from selling simple health and vitality and towards selling the seductive illusion of biohacking and advanced human technology.
Even if it was just basic creatine and sugar.
And they did this even if the underlying white powder was, at its core, just a widely available basic amino acid or creatine compound.
Okay, but this brings me right back to our foundational source material, because I know Arnaud van der Veere, operating out of Force One over in The Hague, took a wildly different philosophical approach during this exact same era.
He absolutely did, and it is a brilliant, highly illuminating contract in business philosophy. While massive companies like MuscleTech were throwing fake bar graphs and actors in lab coats at the consumer, Arnaud and his dedicated team at Force One were insisting on genuine, rigorous R&D.
Because he actually understood the science.
Arnaud recognized very early on that many of the so-called clinical studies heavily cited by these flashy brands were scientifically absurd. They were often based on tiny, heavily cherry-picked test groups of maybe 3 or 4 people, or the studies weren't even conducted on humans at all.
Right, it was marketing disguised as the scientific method.
So Force One took the harder path. They did their own rigorous internal testing. They constantly reformulated their products based on actual observable physiological efficacy in real athletes rather than what looked best in an advertisement.
That's real integrity.
And Arnaud's approach to communicating with the consumer was the exact polar opposite of the muscle tech model. In fact, he famously ran an advertisement in the U.S. market for one of his highly effective yet notoriously terrible-tasting amino acid formulations. Do you recall what that specific ad copy said?
I do, and I have to say, it is hands down my favorite detail from this entire historical compilation. The advertisement literally just said, tastes like shit but works like hell.
Yes, a completely unfiltered, unpolished message, and it sold incredibly well.
I mean, it is the absolute ultimate form of anti-marketing marketing. Think about the consumer psychology there. While muscle tech is essentially treating me like I'm a gullible idiot, throwing fake bar graphs and pseudoscience at me to justify a $50 price tag, Arnaud is just standing there with total transparency saying, look, man, I'm not going to lie to you. This powder tastes like battery acid. It's going to be rough to get down, but if you drink it, you're going to get huge.
Exactly.
I know instantly which one of those two guys I would actually trust with my money. It's raw, undeniable honesty.
It was a highly refreshing dose of reality in an industry that was increasingly becoming addicted to its own hype. But that reliance on hype and the relentless quarter-by-quarter corporate pursuit to find the next creatine pushed the industry into a very dark and dangerous corner.
How so?
When your entire business model relies on constantly topping your last product's extreme claims, you inevitably start looking for stronger, more extreme, and often much riskier chemical ingredients.
That sounds incredibly ominous. Where did that pursuit lead them?
It leads us directly into the highly controversial era of ephedra and the subsequent arms race of extreme stimulant-based pre-workouts.
Okay, I definitely remember hearing the word ephedra constantly on the news in the late 90s and early 2000s. It was absolutely everywhere, from gas stations to gyms. What exactly was it, chemically speaking?
Ephedra is a botanical extract derived from a plant that has actually been utilized in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years, where it is known as ma huang.
Okay.
In traditional practices, it was brewed into teas and used primarily for respiratory issues like severe asthma and bronchitis. But the active alkaloids inside the plant, specifically a compound called ephedrine, are incredibly potent sympathomimetic amines.
That sounds intense. What does that do?
They act as massive stimulants to the human central nervous system.
So it severely amps you up. It triggers the fight or flight response.
Dramatically so. Structurally, ephedrine is remarkably similar to amphetamines. When ingested, it binds to adrenergic receptors in the body.
And what's the physical result?
This causes rapid vasoconstriction, the narrowing of blood vessels, which spikes your blood pressure. It massively raises your resting heart rate, dilates your airways, and acts as a powerful appetite suppressant.
Wow.
The supplement industry, always looking for an edge, figured out that if you mathematically combined ephedrine with a heavy dose of caffeine and added a little bit of synthetic aspirin, you created a synergistic biological bomb called the ECA stack.
The legendary ECA stack. I've heard old school 90s bodybuilders talk about this combination in hushed tones, like it was actual magic.
For rapid fat burning and appetite suppression, it practically was magic. The caffeine stimulated the nervous system, the ephedrine boosted the metabolic rate and released norepinephrine, and the aspirin inhibited the body's prostaglandin production.
And what did the aspirin do exactly?
It effectively prevented the body from shutting the stimulant process down. It kept the metabolic fire burning far longer than it naturally should. It supercharged the metabolism and literally melted body fat while providing intense, jittery energy.
Sounds like a miracle pill.
The problem? It worked a little too well, and the collateral side effects on the cardiovascular system were severe.
Because you are artificially forcing the heart to run like a race car engine all day long.
Exactly. And as the marketing pushed ephedra out of the niche hardcore bodybuilding demographic and into the hands of average, everyday consumers.
Just normal people.
Yeah, people just looking to effortlessly lose 10 pounds before a beach vacation. When that happened, the emergency room visits began to spike violently. Normal people were suddenly experiencing severe heart palpitations, chronic hypertension, acute strokes, and in several highly publicized cases, fatal heart attacks.
Oh my God. It became a lethal issue.
It erupted into a massive national media scandal. Major news networks were running exposés constantly. But the FDA, operating under the strict legal constraints of that DSHEA law we discussed earlier, remember, the burden of proof was on the government.
Right, they had to prove it was unsafe.
They had to spend years painstakingly compiling adverse event reports and clinical data just to legally prove it was definitively unsafe.
While people were dying.
Yes. Finally, after years of legal battles, in 2004, the FDA officially banned the sale of ephedra alkaloids in dietary supplements. It was the absolute biggest, most highly scrutinized test of the DSHEA legislation to date.
So ephedra is forcefully banned by the federal government in 2004. The manufacturers completely lose their golden goose, their best-selling ingredient. Did they just pack up their invisible factories, admit defeat, and go home?
Not a chance. If there is one thing this history shows, it's that the industry operates in relentless cycles of innovation and evasion.
Evasion, I like that word for it.
When one highly profitable gray area stimulant is banned by the government, the formulators immediately retreat to the archives to scour old, forgotten medical literature for the next one.
And what did they find this time?
They found their replacement in a synthetic compound called DMAA. 1,3-dimethylamino.
DMAA? That sounds purely chemical. What was the origin of that?
It was originally developed and patented way back in the 1940s by the pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly to be used as a simple nasal decongestant.
A nasal decongestant.
Yeah, but it had long been abandoned and forgotten. The supplement industry cleverly claimed it was a natural extract of the geranium plant to exploit a DSHEA loophole. A company named USP Labs dug this chemical up, realized its potent stimulant properties, and packed it into a neon-colored new pre-workout product called Jack Third.
Jack Third, notoriously spelled with a 3 instead of an E. I vividly remember seeing those tiny glowing tubs on top of everyone's fridge.
Jack Third was a cultural phenomenon. It practically single-handedly invented the modern extreme pre-workout category. Before this era, pre-workout supplements were mostly just a cup of coffee, or maybe some basic carbohydrates and amino acids.
Right.
Jack Third caused an intense, almost overwhelming sensory and psychological experience. Users famously reported severe tingling across their skin, absolute hyper-focused tunnel vision, and a temporary feeling of total physical invincibility while in the gym.
Tunnel vision in the gym sounds incredibly intense. But I have to push back here, acting as a proxy for the manufacturers. Because we see this argument constantly. If I go to a coffee shop and rapidly drink 10 shots of espresso in an hour, my heart is going to explode from the caffeine toxicity too.
Sure.
Why is the supplement product itself blamed and banned when a young user recklessly decides to take 3 heaping scoops of Jack Third instead of the single-level scoop clearly recommended on the warning label? Aren't people just actively abusing the product? Why punish the manufacturer for user error?
That is the exact vigorous defense the manufacturers mounted in federal court. They argued vehemently that millions of adult consumers utilize the product safely when strictly adhering to the label directions.
Which is technically true.
It is, but if we expand our view and look at the broader cultural context, the marketing and the brand positioning practically dared users to abuse it. The product names were highly aggressive, the advertising promised insane, mind-altering intensity, and the online culture surrounding these specific products actively celebrated pushing the biological limits.
It became a badge of honor to take multiple scoops.
Exactly. Eventually, the adverse event reports mirrored the ephedra crisis, rapid heart rates, panic attacks, high blood pressure, and the FDA was forced to step in once again. DMAA faced the exact same fate as ephedra. It was federally banned and wiped from the shelves.
It really is just an endless, high-stakes game of regulatory whack-a-mole between the FDA regulators and the rogue chemists. But wait, let's look at the timeline here. How did a product like Jack Third get so famous, so incredibly fast, on a global scale? By the time the late 2000s rolled around, young guys weren't really subscribing to Joe Weider's print magazines anymore to get their information.
Spot on. Jack Third didn't need Joe Weider's magazines. It didn't need print advertising at all. Because by the late 2000s, the internet had arrived and completely annihilated the traditional magazine monopoly on information.
Ah, the internet changes everything.
This is what we call the digital shift. And it fundamentally rewired the entire economics of the industry.
The era of the digital forums.
Yes. Massive websites like bodybuilding.com emerged. They brilliantly combined a massive global e-commerce store with incredibly active, highly populated user forums and thousands of free articles.
It put the power in the user's hands.
Suddenly, the power dynamic of the industry completely inverted. The power shifted away from the giant manufacturer dictating the truth via a $1 million full-page magazine ad and moved directly into the hands of the consumer, who is now discovering the truth via real-time peer reviews.
Right. The information asymmetry was destroyed. If a new supplement tasted like garbage, or if the proprietary blend didn't actually work in the gym, 100 angry guys on a forum thread would tear it apart with biochemical analysis by noon, and that product would be effectively dead by dinner time.
The community policed the industry better than the FDA could.
Organic user reviews became vastly more powerful and persuasive than any glossy advertising campaign. The internet democratized the supplement industry.
It really did. But as the forums peaked, social media arrived. YouTube and Instagram birthed a completely new, incredibly powerful species of marketer, the fitness influencer.
Oh, the era of the influencers. Aesthetics over everything.
It changed the requirements for fame. You no longer needed to be Mr. Olympia, carrying 260 pounds of muscle with 22-inch biceps to sell a product.
You just needed good lighting and abs.
A highly relatable, charismatic guy or girl with a very good, attainable physique, a decent camera set up in their bedroom, and an engaging personality could rapidly build an audience of millions.
And sell directly to them.
And they did something Joe Weider's static magazines could never do. They built deep parasocial trust. They didn't just show their polished workouts. They vlogged their breakfast. They talked about their mental health struggles. They showed their daily routines.
The audience felt intimately connected to them, like they were friends. Yeah. It essentially turned the entire global fitness industry into the ultimate high school popularity contest. I mean, it doesn't matter if the underlying nutritional science behind a product is peer-reviewed in a prestigious medical journal. If the cool kid with the abs and the perfectly curated aesthetic on Instagram looks into the camera and says a specific fat burner works, millions of followers will immediately swipe up and buy it just to be like them.
It is entirely built on parasocial trust. A highly enthusiastic 10-minute video review from the right influencer could literally sell out a brand's entire global inventory in 24 hours without the manufacturing brand spending a single traditional advertising dime.
That scale is mind-boggling, but how did these small companies actually ship all that product so fast?
The staggering logistics of selling out globally overnight were completely solved by the parallel rise of Amazon, specifically their FBA program, Fulfillment by Amazon.
How exactly did the mechanics of FBA change the landscape for a startup supplement company?
Before Amazon FBA, if you wanted to start a supplement brand, the logistics were a nightmare. You had to sign a lease for a massive commercial warehouse. You had to hire a staff of workers to physically pack cardboard boxes.
That's a huge upfront cost.
You had to negotiate complex shipping rates with UPS and FedEx. It required massive capital overhead. With Amazon FBA, the barriers to entry evaporated.
How so?
A 22-year-old kid sitting in a garage could call a contract manufacturer, have them press a private label supplement, and instruct the factory to ship the pallets directly to an Amazon fulfillment center. Amazon's robots and employees handled the storage, the packing, the global shipping, and even the customer service returns.
So the brand owner never even touched the physical bottle.
The logistical barriers to entry literally dropped to absolute zero. You just needed a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection.
Absolute zero. But as with all technological leaps, solving one problem created a massive new one, right?
Oh, definitely.
When the barriers to entry drop to zero, the market floods. When anyone on Earth can instantly sell a white-labeled supplement, how do you get found in a sea of 10,000 identical vitamin C bottles?
The answer is the algorithm. Specifically, Amazon's proprietary A9 search algorithm. SEO, search engine optimization, rapidly became vastly more important to a company's survival than the actual biochemical ingredients inside the bottle.
So it's a computer game now.
If your supplement ranks on page 2 of the Amazon search results, from a commercial standpoint, it effectively does not exist.
That is a genuinely wild thought. Computer algorithms are now actively dictating human biology and health choices. Companies are probably spending far more time and capital figuring out how to artificially game the Amazon search bar, analyzing keyword density, conversion rates, and review velocity than they are spending on actually improving the efficacy of the vitamin itself.
They absolutely are. It is an open secret in the industry that many brands actively reverse engineer their formulations.
Meaning what?
They don't ask, what does the human body need? They look at Amazon search volume data, see that 100,000 people a month are searching for the exact phrase, magnesium sleep anxiety. And they hastily throw together a cheap product just to rank for those specific keywords.
That's incredibly cynical.
It is. But this massive global scale, these overnight influencer success stories, and the hundreds of billions of dollars actively flowing through these e-commerce channels, it finally attracted the absolute biggest fish in the global pond.
Wall Street.
Wall Street finally smelled them up.
Oh, here come the suits. The era of the garage startup is over.
Welcome to the modern era of massive corporate consolidation. Over the last decade, giant private equity firms and massive big food conglomerates looked at the chaotic supplement industry and realized it was no longer just a fringe hobby for bodybuilders.
It was a highly lucrative, recurring revenue machine.
It was a mature asset class.
Give me some examples. Who bought who?
Massive, industry-altering acquisitions took place in rapid succession. Glanbia, a colossal global nutrition and cheese group based in Ireland, bought massive legacy brands like Optimum Nutrition and BSN.
Wow.
Hormel Foods, the giant corporation famous for making Spam and chili, bought Muscle Milk for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hormel bought Muscle Milk. That's surreal.
The entire industry professionalized overnight. The passionate founders in gym clothes were swiftly replaced by ruthless boards of directors, massive corporate legal teams, and incredibly strict FDA-compliant quality assurance departments.
It is wild to trace that arc. It went from Arnaud van Veere manually scooping dusty powder in a back room in The Hague to a sterile billion-dollar corporate boardroom on Wall Street.
It is a profound evolution. But this exact corporate pivot brings us to the absolute most exciting forward-looking part of Arnaud van Veere's historical compilation, The Future.
The future. Okay.
Because the future of this industry, driven by technology, signals the definitive end of the average consumer.
The end of the average consumer. What does that mean in practical terms?
For 75 years, the entire economic model of the supplement industry was based on mass production. Formulate one generic multivitamin, put it in a plastic bottle, and sell that exact same formulation to 1 million different people.
A shotgun approach.
But modern genomics and biological science have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that our bodies are wildly, fundamentally different.
Right.
Your specific DNA profile, your unique gut microbiome flora, your daily cortisol and stress levels, your sleep architecture, all of these highly individualized data points dictate the exact micronutrients your body actually requires on any given Tuesday morning.
Right. When you say it out loud, it seems so obvious. Why on earth should I take the exact same generic dose of vitamin D or magnesium as someone who is a foot taller than me, has a completely different genetic lineage, and lives in a completely different, sunnier climate?
You absolutely shouldn't. It is biologically inefficient. And this is exactly where Arnaud van Veere and Force One are highlighted in our source material as the absolute visionary pioneers of the space.
He saw this coming.
Arnaud saw, decades before the technology even caught up to the idea, that the one-size-fits-all mass market model was fundamentally philosophically flawed. He recognized that the ultimate, final evolution of human supplementation had to be total personalization.
Mass personalization at scale.
Yes. The billion-dollar supplement of the future isn't going to be some newly discovered magical rainforest berry found in the Amazon.
What will it be?
The supplement of the future is the exact right, perfectly dosed combination of existing, proven ingredients, tailored specifically for your unique, real-time biology and updated on a daily basis.
Okay, paint a picture for me here. Take me out of the theory. How does this actually work in practice for the listener tomorrow morning?
Let's run a highly realistic scenario based on technology being developed right now. Imagine you wake up. Your biometric smartwatch, which you've worn all night, has tracked your sleep architecture.
Okay, it's reading my vitals.
It notices you had a terrible lack of deep, restorative REM sleep. It registers that your heart rate variability is unusually low this morning, which is a key physiological indicator of high systemic stress.
Rough night.
It also connects via the cloud to your digital calendar, noting you have a highly stressful, high-stakes presentation at 2 p.m., and connects to your fitness app, which shows you are scheduled for a grueling, heavy leg workout at 6 p.m.
Okay, my watch definitely knows way too much about my life.
It has a complete, real-time map of your physical and psychological state. It takes all of that massive biometric data, processes it via an AI algorithm, and communicates directly with a sleek, smart dispenser sitting on your kitchen counter.
Wait, it formulates it in my house.
While you are making your coffee, that dispenser microdoses and formulates a custom single-serve nutritional packet designed exclusively for your exact needs today.
That is insane.
It boosts your L-theanine and ashwagandha doses to help manage the cortisol stress of your 2 p.m. meeting. It includes a highly specific, weight-adjusted dose of caffeine timed perfectly to hit your bloodstream for your 6 p.m. workout.
It's predicting my day.
And it preloads an extra dose of highly bioavailable magnesium glycinate for you to take later to ensure you finally get that deep sleep tonight and tomorrow. Based on new data, the chemical mix will be entirely different.
Wow. I have to say, hearing you lay it out like the sheer technological marvel of it is staggering. We are talking about seamlessly integrating our DNA, our continuous cardiovascular data, and our daily schedules directly into a physical machine that instantly optimizes our biology.
It's like living in a sci-fi novel.
It really is. And it validates the early visionary work of pioneers like Arnaud van Veere, who clearly knew all those years ago that we eventually had to treat the highly specific individual, not the broad demographic.
It is the ultimate convergence. Big food, big tech, and big pharma are rapidly merging into a single omnipotent health and wellness monolith. The advanced technological tools required to optimize human biology are finally, after decades of trial and error, catching up to our ancient, deeply ingrained ambitions to live longer, stronger, and more vibrant lives.
What an incredible, sprawling journey this has been. To think we started this conversation in the shadow of 1945, looking at simple, dark, amber glass bottles of basic vitamins meant to stop our teeth from falling out.
A long way from there.
We traveled to that gritty back room in The Hague in 1976 where Arnaud van Veere was manually scooping chalky bulk protein from 50-kilo sacks. We survived Joe Weider's masterful magazine manipulation, the overwhelming mall smells of the GNC era, the wild legal loopholes of DSHEA.
The fake medical lab coats of muscle tech.
Right, the fake science. The terrifying heart palpitations of the ephedra and Jack Third days, and the chaotic, algorithm-driven influencer popularity contests. And now we end up looking at a near future where a sophisticated AI formulates a custom, DNA-specific nutritional profile for us in our own kitchens every single morning.
It is a stunning, deeply complex industrial evolution. And the ultimate, most empowering key takeaway from Arnaud's comprehensive source material is that despite the massive Wall Street corporate takeovers and the algorithmic complexities, the true fundamental power still resides entirely with the consumer.
That's a relief to hear.
In this modern, digitally transparent era, you have unprecedented access to the actual biochemical science, the global peer reviews, and your own biometric data. You possess the power to demand absolute quality, safety, and proven efficacy from the brands you choose to support.
You really do. The dark ages of just blindly trusting the biggest, most oiled-up guy on the magazine cover are officially over. We have the data now.
We do. But to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as we close out this history. If artificial intelligence and continuous biometric monitoring reach a point where they genuinely know your body's specific chemical deficiencies better than your own conscious brain does, will taking your daily AI customized supplement still feel like a personal health choice? Or will it inevitably start to feel more like a mandatory automated software update for your human biology?
Oh man, a mandatory software update for your biology, that visual is absolutely going to stick with me. We've officially waded out of the diagnostic muddy waters and straight into the AI matrix. Thank you so much everyone for joining us on this extensive deep dive into the fascinating wild history of the global supplement industry. Until next time, keep questioning exactly what is inside the bottle and keep optimizing.